Hi, this is Victoria of Women's Issues, Women's Voices, and we're going to try something a little different tonight. We're in the studio rather than meeting by Zoom. Corri and I will be recording the Goddess Hour, and so this is going to be a brief or hopefully a 1 hour recording, but what you're going to hear mostly is just our voices. You're not going to actually be seeing us because I don't really have any way in my technological ability to record to video both of us while we're talking. So we'll see how this goes.
Yellow.
Okay.
Yellow is
For some reason,
this channel is that's green. Do you know which one yellow is? Okay.
Good evening. This is Victoria from Women's Issues, Women's Voices, and I'm in the studio this evening with my good friend Corri Flaker Fraser. And this evening we are going to be talking about Quan Yin. Oh, I forgot to jump ahead. I jumped ahead. This evening is the Goddess Hour. Corri and I gather together once a month and we come on air and we explore goddess archetypes. If you've missed our last few shows, we have been exploring Turtle Woman to Kwan Yin has been our shift. And so tonight we're talking about Kwan Yin. Do you want to say hello to the folks out there?
Hi, everybody.
So it's a little strange. This is the first time that I've been in the studio for several months. This is the first time that Corri and I have been in the studio together for a year and a half.
I was in the studio a few weeks ago with Sarah and Ivania to talk about to do our book discussion. But yeah, this is our first time here together.
Oh, so I'm just going to invite everybody to take a deep breath and, hold it for us that we are going to figure all this out tonight technologically.
I'm feeling confident.
It's good that we are bringing in the energies of the goddess of compassion and mercy.
Right.
So how do we want to introduce Quan Yin to the listeners?
Well, so Quan Yin is an Eastern goddess, and that's a good question. How do we introduce her? We've talked about so many different things before the show about what we wanted to talk about. But introducing her, she is picture a goddess sitting on a lotus flower with one hand.
Let's see, it's her right hand on her knee.
Her right hand is on her knee, so one leg is crossed under her and one leg is sitting up. Her right hand is on her knee, and in her left hand, she's holding a vessel. And she has this peaceful, serene look on her face, and she just looks as if she could just absorb anything.
So we're in masks because we're trying to respect each other's space. So we'll have to remember to lean closer into the mic because
Can you turn right?
I have us all the way up.
All right, that's great. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. So and I was reading that the hands represent different things. That the hand on the knee, if I get this right, is about wisdom. And the hand that's either raised or holding the vessel is holding compassion. And I just think it's interesting that the hand that is holding her own body is the hand of wisdom. And that she's this balance between wisdom and compassion. Yeah. So the piece that I read is that she's about 1st century.
Okay.
China.
BCE, I'm assuming. I mean,
no, because then they talked about second century, so I'm going to assume it's. I always get them backwards. The what timeline are we in now? CE. CE, right?
Wouldn't it be? Oh yeah, CE.
Yeah,
That's
CE.
right.
So
That's
it
right.
was first century CE.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Not thinking very linearly. So sometimes folks talk about Kwan Yin as it is in a similar vein that she's like the Chinese Virgin Mary. This idea of being compassionate and loving, all unconditional love. Yeah.
Yes. And all of the children are her children, and all of the women, like the women of childbirth, she was there. Got like all of the suffering is taken by Kwan Yin.
Yeah, because that's so. So she was a bodhisattva, and that means someone who has taken a vow to return lifetime after lifetime to help alleviate all the suffering that exists. So someone who was once human, but has lived and gotten to the point that they're saying, I'm going to keep returning back in my human form until all suffering has been vanquished. Yeah. And Kuan Yin's special, her like personal flair on that is part of the story that I'm going to tell.
Yeah, you want to tell it?
Yeah. So her personal flair on that was that she vowed to return lifetime after lifetime to help alleviate all suffering and to never fall into despair. That was the piece that she vowed. And the story that I feel, and I'm just going to put a little seed in here for what we're going to talk about in a little bit, but until Corri invited me to explore Kwan Yin for this show, Kwan Yin has been a goddess archetype that I have really not wanted to have anything to do with and not really researched, and not because I do not think that compassion and support and unconditional love is important. And so, and we'll talk about that more later. So, but I sought a story that really resonated for me, and the story that I found that I can share on our Women's Issues, Women's Voices, the YouTube that I listen to. The story is that she took this vow and she traveled all over the earth, alleviating suffering until she felt that she had met that. And then she went down into hell. And she then worked and loved and was present with the demons, working to alleviate their suffering. At which point she went to heaven. And it's really interesting because we don't usually think of God or the gods as having suffering. But what this man explained was in the Buddhist tradition, the gods of Buddhism have a fear of change. And so she actually went to the heavens to help the gods alleviate their fear, the suffering that they had because of their fear of change, which I thought was very interesting. But
change at
I don't know. That's
okay. Yeah,
this is not where I'm an expert, but I just thought that was so interesting. But while she's up there in heaven, which the way I understood it was sort of the ultimate, like she had done all this work and now she's in heaven, and she looks down at earth and what she sees is suffering. She sees, rape and pillage and war and racism and sexism and all people going hungry and just all this horrible stuff. And she throws her hands up in the air and, just says, ugh. And in the process of that happening, her head explodes. And she loses consciousness and she falls from heaven, plunk, I love the guy says that, and lands back on earth as a human again. And her teacher, the Buddha, is there and he says, oh, what happened? And she said, well, I fell into despair. And he said, you broke your vow. And she's like, I think I did. And he said, and what do you want to do with that? And she said, I want to keep on working with humanity to help them ease their suffering. And so together, teacher and student mold these 10,000 shards of her head that had exploded into arms, and every palm has an eye on it. And this actually, and I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Then she becomes the 10,000 armed Buddha, Avalokiteshvara. And what the 10,000 arms are about the 10,000 ways that you can see truth. So she keeps on doing her work, but she's transformed from Kwan Yin into this other deity.
I've got a question.
Okay.
What happened to her head?
Actually, in the picture of this Avalokiteshvara, which I don't know that I'm pronouncing that correctly, she had 12 heads and 10,000 arms, and that each of the head represents some facet of humanity.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that was the story that just really fascinated me, because it was just about this, like, the reality of what it's like to commit yourself to be there to alleviate suffering, and what happens when you feel despair. Like, I've never read a story about Kwan Yin where that human component of it was in the story. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, one of the stories I read that resonated with me was that she was married. She was not married. She was the daughter of a really wealthy and powerful monarch or something, and then she refused to marry, and she said, I'm just not doing it, I won't do it. And he sent her to go live in the nunnery, and he was telling the nuns to just make her life terrible. So they gave her all these jobs that nobody else wanted to do, and one of the jobs was to tend to the sick and the dying. And so she was cleaning out bedpans, and she was washing the people. These were really, really sick nuns and people who were just on their deathbed. And she found fulfillment in doing that. And she cared for them, and she helped them cross over into death and transition. Mm. And that just, like, that was just her service. And that resonated with me because I do death work sometimes, and it just, like, offers it helps me using Kwan Yin as a talisman, or talisman, so to speak. It can help me get into the compassion and the mercy and just understand the suffering. I mean, I will never be able to understand the suffering in that moment, but just trying to see something from a different perspective, other than, like, oh, ew, gross, oh, that's scary, I don't want to tend to that. Like, it's helping.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, one of the reasons that Corri and I we wanted to do this, was to have a place to be able to openly discuss these goddess archetypes, and to bring them to bring life to them in a more contemporary way. And so what I was able to realize is in this process, and again, Corri, grateful to you, because my response when Corri first said Kwan Yin was because I have always felt that the Kwan Yin archetype was out of balance, that that there's already so many messages for women about being more compassionate, being more merciful, the always being the support. Um, that when I read stories about Quan Yin, I pushed it away because not because I didn't want to be compassionate or merciful, loving, but because there never seemed to be a balance to it. Like, how does Kuan Yin support herself so that she can have the capacity to do this? And so over this last month, as I have been meditating and reading and journaling, and I'm in the middle of a major move in my life, one of the things that I was able to recognize, and I think it's really important as we're talking about goddess archetypes, is in my lifetime, in my work with the goddess, I have been working with it as archetypes of something that I want to emulate or embody in my life. So, like, what I was attracted to with Turtle Woman is this idea of bringing that slowness into my life, and the ability to take care of myself, and then when I, sense safety, to go on my path. Like, for me, that's what Turtle Woman was all about: pausing, slowing down, tending to myself. Um, but when I think about Kuan Yin as an archetype, like, I don't want more of that, because I really feel like I'm working on how do I support myself so that I can be compassionate, loving, and merciful. And so it made me realize that what I really had not been consciously doing, although it's been changing in my work over the last couple of years, my spiritual work, is thinking of these archetypes as energies of unlimited, boundless support, in Kuan Yin's case, that I'm then invited to accept, to just allow to happen in my life, as not as something that I have to do, but something that I can receive. So the interesting thing about, I'll put in a little addendum on this story, that right before this, I was with Anne Marie Long, and she was giving me a massage, wonderful, and we were talking about this, and she said, but it's right there in every statue of Kuan Yin. How she's getting her support is she's sitting on the lotus flower we talked about in the last show, that is down going through the muck and the yuck and the right, and attached to the earth. So she's this cycle that she's always taking in the support from the earth, and that's what allows her. And so now I have, like, in the 20 minutes before this show started, now I have this whole new thing so, because I was picturing Kuan Yin as only energy going out, right? And for me to receive, but not wanting to be one-sided in my own work, right? Because you can't, it'll deplete you.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, and also we have a statue of Kuan Yin here in the studio with us. And one of her feet is actually, it's like her knee is up and her foot is on the lotus. Like, she's not just folded up, she's connected with her feet. And that's kind of a grounding, like putting your bare feet on soil or on the earth is a very grounding and stabilizing action.
Yeah. So, and what we were discussing before this was um, that that nature itself is always a cycle, flowing in, flowing out. So there had to be something in the energy, but I wasn't seeing it in the stories. I mean, I remember one story, and I can't remember the specifics of it, where like she gets her sight, and the first thing she sees is a blind man, and she's so struck by his suffering, she gouges her own eyes out. And I'm just like, no, that's that's not what I want in my life. Um, however, it's like if you, this is where it's like taking it from us embodying it to this being a story that we, an energy that we can depend on,
Mm-hmm.
which is different than being human, right? And that goes back to she was human, and then a bodhisattva is kind of like an angel. Yeah, you know, they kind of live in that half and half. They're not, they're of the earth, but they're actually divine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I think of being Kwan Yin, I think of my being an embodiment of her is having compassion for others. And using Kwan Yin, I can kind of adjust my perceptual lens to have compassion for people that don't have the same viewpoints that I do. So I really try and measure that in every interaction I have with conflict. And the energy that I bring in, like instead of being, I'm accepting Kwan Yin, it's giving compassion for myself. So sometimes I can be hard on myself.
And
Sometimes I need somebody a compassionate entity to hold me.
well, and I think that you saying that now that I have this loaded, I mean, and I just thought it was so interesting because I mean, we literally talked about the lotus flower. Like it was right, it's been right there. I've been carrying this statue around with me for days, right? And that the ability to be compassionate and, you know, the 10,000 arms with the eyes to see, what was the phrase that they used? To see 10,000 ways of seeing truth. You're only able to do if you stay in your grounding, in your lotus flower connected to the earth. Like you can't be compassionate and merciful if you're constantly being pulled off your lotus flower. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And sometimes those waves along the shore get a little rough.
yeah, and knock you off, right? So we have, so part of the Goddess Hour is we always offer a little bit of something that listeners really brings it back for you, that this is not just us talking, but we invite you to then allow yourself to practice something with Quan Yin. And so we're gonna play a piece of music, Namo Quan Yin Pusa. And again, I will put the link for you to be able to see these songs on my YouTube channel on the Women's Issues, Women's Voices Facebook page. You can go join us at Women's Issues, Women's Voices. We would love to have you friend us or like us or whatever the term is. If you have any questions about tonight's show, you can also write to us at WIWV@KOPN.org. And when you do, in the subject line, put Kwan Yin or put Victoria or put Corri, something so we know that it's about this show. We'd love to hear your points of view. We'd love to hear how experiences you've had with Kwan Yin, anything you'd like to share. You're also welcome to post that on the Facebook page. So tonight we're playing this song, and I'm going to invite you to allow yourself to take this 5 minutes and simply accept and be open to the experience of unlimited, boundless support. And that's it. See you in 5 minutes.
Can you turn it up? Can you turn it up so we can hear the music a little bit?
I'm turning the control and volume up, but nothing's happening.
Try air monitor, air room.
Click some. Oh, wait a second. Do I have to put on studio?
Yeah, try that. Huh. What's the white button for? Underneath it?
Oh, let's talk back.
Oh.
See, that's I tried when I came in.
Air?
I'm always afraid to start pushing on things.
No? Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's okay. If you can hear it, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, we could hear the music playing before, so but that was because it was on over that.
Yeah. Right, because it was.
I wonder if like one of those, but I don't want to.
Yeah. Whatever we do, we have to.
You know, something I think of, like these stories.
I realize this is still recording. Oh, well, this is it's. You're listening to 89.5 FM KOPN, Columbia, Mid-Missouri's source for in-depth news, diverse talk, and music of the world. It's more than radio, it's community radio. You can find us on the web at KOPN.org. I would like to give a shout out to our friends in Fayette, Ladonia, New Haven, and Sturgeon, and all over the world. So if you're just joining us, this is Victoria. I'm in the studio with my sister friend, Corri.
Hello.
And we are doing a show that we do monthly called the Goddess Hour. And in this show, we explore archetypes of the goddess, how they resonate for us in our life, challenges that we have. We try to learn some more things about it, about what this goddess archetype is about, and trying to bring it to life for people. That these were stories from different cultures, different time periods.
Right. Different political and cultural spectrums.
Right, and that there's something important in them, and we want to spread this. That these are different ways that you can think about things, and Quan Yin, like what we talked about in the first half, is this her manifestation or transformation into Avalokiteshvara, the 10,000 ways of seeing truth. So.
Yeah, and then we also talked about expanding the perceptual lens of somebody else's point of view. So this is a story that we've learned, and we struggled with the story when we first learned about it, just because Kwan Yin is so unlike the culture that we live in currently. I was taught to really work hard and just push and hustle and pack my schedule in with lots of things. And as the oldest of 5 daughters, we were all, and our father is he is a self-proclaimed jock. Like, we were taught to be tough, and we were taught to be like, do our best. And I think that's the American culture for a lot of us. And so learning about these soft qualities of Kwan Yin and her compassion for others, and I mean, I was taught to be compassionate, but just being soft and being gentle and giving. That was something that I was a little taken aback by when I first learned about it.
Right, that's the same experience that I had. Was it's interesting because I remember reading, and I wish I remembered the book, but I don't. How when women come into certain religious or spiritual traditions that has been mostly male dominated, that there are things that men, like humility, compassion, unconditional love, I'm trying to think of any, but those are the ones that come to mind, that those are traits that the men are being invited to practice because culturally most men are not taught that. And so to get closer to spirit, they're invited to do these things. But then the problem is that if you have a culture where women are already expected to be humble and to be compassionate and to always be the support, always be the mother, maternal, and then they join a religious or a spiritual group, now suddenly, like, they're being asked to do it even more, even though that's already their role, and it becomes lopsided. It's not what women needed to be exploring. In most cultures, women needed to be exploring their, like, the more assertive boundary setting, right? But that, like, just what you're saying though is that, but we can also go to the other side where, right, that go competition, all of that in our culture can affect us as women to the point that we burn out. Right?
And I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Olympics.
Not at all. 0-0.
But one of the big things in the Olympics, especially in the gymnastics, well, in many, but the gymnastics realm, Simone Biles, who's a very, very talented gymnast, stopped. She did something on the vault that didn't feel right to her. So just before her next competition, she said, I can't do it. I need to tend to my mental wellness. And the US team just applauded her and celebrated her. And there's been an outpouring of support of people that are saying, yes, this is what we need. Somebody publicly saying, I am burnt out. There's too much pressure on me, and it is time for me to stop, or I'm going to hurt myself. And then we rewind to 20, 30 years ago when there were other gymnasts who were pushed to the limit, and then they ended up hurting themselves and having to retire.
Or each other.
Yeah, or each other, right? Or each other. And the coaches are like, yeah, you could do it, and just pushing them to the limit. And they hurt themselves to the point where they were paralyzed or they blew out their knee and they had to retire, and their lives ended as their identity as a gymnast ended, where the coaches just kept on coaching. But so my point of this story is our culture has been taught to, our culture, the culture that we are currently living in, has been taught, have been taught to push and ignore our inner, the compassion that we need for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to listen when it's time to rest.
Yeah.
And I know you love talking about rest, don't you?
Well, what's coming to my mind is my mentor, Susan Aposhian, talks about the difference between imposing and allowing. And so it's interesting because she's talked about it even in meditation. And I remember once having a conversation a few years ago with a man who had dedicated himself to Zen meditation and like hardcore, like forcing himself to sit for hours a day. And I said, that's just my body does not want to do that. And he goes, you just push through it. You just push through it. And I was like, that's not my sort of meditation. And I never had language for it until Susan talks about that often people impose themselves to sit in a certain way for a certain amount of time, right? And so it actually stops being meditation. It starts being like an act of willfully not tending to the body, not allowing the body to come into a meditative state, right? To come into the meditation. And since I've been practicing that allowing, I actually can sit for longer. I'm able to really be there. Where before, when I was like putting myself into the position and setting the timer, it was like, I'm looking at the timer. I'm looking at the timer. So I feel like, it's really funny because I feel like I've done like this, is it 180? Yes, 180 degrees. That when we started out, like I was like, Kwan Yin, and now there's all of these things about Quan Yin that I'm like, okay, I'm curious. And I think that it comes back to Quan Yin, the archetype is if you're pushing yourself to be, I am going to be boundless support, unconditional love is required, then it actually stops being it, right? And I think as people who work in healing, supporting people to heal, I mean, the one thing that this COVID time has taught me is how much more I need the downtime and the self time so that I can actually be more present for my clients.
Right.
And that the pushing actually depletes me from doing the very thing that I'm desiring. So one of the things that Corri and I realized in doing this is often the archetypes that we're working with. I'm like, is there a contemporary American goddess archetype? I'm thinking of that book, American Gods. It's like, there isn't, because the goddess culture came from all these other places. So like Turtle Woman was an indigenous archetype. Kwan Yin comes from Chinese background, from China.
And Japan, Asia.
And I was trying to, because the Avalokiteshvara almost seems Sanskrit to me,
yes,
which would be Indian.
I think that is also, I have, yeah, India and Japan, China.
So one of the things that we would really like to develop is, if you are listening to this and you are someone has a story or a personal experience of the archetype Kwan Yin from a different perspective, Corri and I would love to hear from you. We love having guests. That's one of the things we'd like to develop with this.
Yeah, we realize we are American. We are Gen X American.
I'm a baby boomer,
Oh,
baby.
baby boomer.
I'm at the very last end, and I'm the tail end of the baby boomers.
we realize there are more perspectives out there, and this is
Right.
just a little piece of it. So if you are interested in sharing your story or sharing more behind the story of Kwan Yin, we want to hear it.
So Calvin is making the phone sign, and I have never answered the phone.
Let me see if I
I'm
can.
on. So if we don't get you, I will be here for a little bit after. So yeah, this is yeah, I don't see it. But if you called, right? Call back after the show ends. Hello there, Calvin.
I wanted to give the number out. It's 573-443.
There we go.
8255, which is talk, 443 talk. And we've recently, and this was news to me too, Corey, recently got retrained on the phones, and that we can answer more than one call at a time. It used to be that we had to isolate our main call, and then the other calls we'd have to deal with consecutively. Now we can get everybody on the part. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but while I just have a second, let me bring up a few things. First of all, I should jump to Corey's dad's defense, really, as a male.
Yeah.
God bless him, he raised 5 beautiful, really wonderful. And my second question is, and I'm really curious about the proper terminology, I've known you since you were a child, a girl. Can I say, can girl, is it, do you feel comfortable with, I always felt girl was a term that was reserved for women to use for other younger women maybe, or whatever, the gang or whatever, but it was out of my, but a girl is okay to describe a young female, just like boy, I guess would be okay. And lastly, we're going to go into the in-betweeny hour, violating strict protocol right now.
Yeah, Calvin's taking us off the rails.
But I just had to compliment you, it's the in-betweeny hour that they asked me to do, which is, 5 times a week for 1 hour, I bridge between what's excellent local programming, really talk programming. I'm learning so much. And then the music programming that people love KOPN for so much. And it's kind of challenging, but on the other hand, it's really rewarding. They ask, well, why do this? What is the commonality? Well, it's right here. I would never get next to this subject if it wasn't for, a vague curiosity of Corri, the excellent engineering, which I kind of, it's good on the ears. And then you find yourself starting to listen and follow along. Well, oh man, this is an interesting train of thought, as opposed to the rote things you hear elsewhere, everywhere. And you do a wonderful job of that. And in the same way, I would never listen to, well, let's be honest, bluegrass or even Irish music if it wasn't for the people who I've heard introduce it to me on KOPN. So I guess that is the commonality between the evening hours and our evening programming. But once again, great job. I wanted to give those numbers out: 443-8255. You guys sound ready to answer some questions, so dial up.
Okay, thank you.
Carry on.
Yeah, if the phone rings, I know what to do.
And that was the voice of Calvin, who will be on right after us, as he said, with some transition between our new programming, which is talk till 7 o'clock, and then music after 7 o'clock. So stay tuned for some fantastic music. And so we were talking, I had this moment where I was like, oh, KOPN, the 10,000 eyes of truth, like how.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
You log into KOPN at different times of the day, and you get these different perspectives on the story of what's going on in our lives.
Yeah.
So we want to.
I'm loving that image.
So I'm just gonna. We have about 10 minutes here. And I do want to say again, if you like and support women's issues, women's voices, please like us on Facebook, drop us a note. We would love to hear from you. You can also send us an email directly at WIWV@KOPN.org in the subject line, put one of our names, and we will be happy to respond to you.
And I believe the term you were searching for on your YouTube channel is subscribe to your
Subscribe. Subscribe.
which I just
Yes.
did.
Okay. Yes, and you can subscribe to my personal professional YouTube channel, which is Embodiment, Live Life More Fully. And I put all the playlists for the various shows that I record, whether it's myself or on my own or with Corri or with anyone else. So, but Corri and I wanted to touch on something about Kwan Yin.
I love this.
That we haven't talked about at all. It's been under the conversation.
I'm so mystified. This is a mystifying. This is a mystifying trait of Kwan Yin that is. Let's share it.
Yeah. So the next time we meet, and do we have the date, Corri? Can you look that up?
I believe it is August.
The next time we do the Goddess Hour in August, Corri will look that up. The topic is going to be like gender politics, gender culture, and Kwan Yin. Because
August 27th.
On August 27th. If you join us then, we'll be talking more about this part of Kwan Yin, that she is not just a goddess archetype, she is a deity archetype. She started out in the 1st century as male. Then, for reasons that we have not yet found, because we're going to know more about this by next time, hopefully. By the 2nd century, she had become female. And I just saw one place where like it gave a real brief, like, that's due to the Taoist influence. I was like, okay, since I don't know what that means. But then more currently, there's statements that we've found over and over again where Kwan Yin manifests in people's lives in whatever gender will support them the most strongly. So Kwan Yin is a deity of transformation and living in that space where she embodies male and female while continuing to embody unconditional love, boundless support, endless mercy. I miss it, I miss one, and
compassion
and full-hearted compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just, it's the transformation that happened. That wasn't something that happened overnight. Mm-hmm. And over the next month, Victoria and I are going to explore and delve deeper into how, and into how,
yeah.
And talking about gender fluidity next time. Mm-hmm. And we'd love more perspectives on that.
Yeah, I mean, it brings me, the questions that I find myself asking because, I have dedicated my life, my adult life, to deepening my relationship with the goddess, and haven't had interest in deepening a relationship with the god. But then thinking about, well, what happens when those words stop needing to be applied?
Yes.
Right? When we start thinking about, well, what culturally, when you allow yourself to think about a deity of compassion, boundless support, unconditional love, and you picture that deity with female attributes, does it feel different in your body? Do you have different thoughts about it than when you envision that same deity as having masculine attributes? I just find that fascinating. So I like it when I'm excited about the thing that we're going to be doing. Yeah. So that's, I don't know do you know what next week's show is?
Isn't it You?
No, it's not me.
Okay, I've got it. I've got it.
You, yeah.
It says next week is, ooh, what is this week? Okay.
So
Today,
next week will be August 6th or 5th.
Sarah.
Okay, what's Sarah?
Sarah's got something. She's actually going to, it says a rebroadcast. Oh, it's right here. Rebroadcast of Rosalie Metro's Have Fun in Burma novel discussion from 2018.
Okay, so she's going to be re-airing a show that she recorded in 2018 about a novel called
Have Fun in Burma. Have Fun in Burma.
Okay, and the author's name?
Rosalie Metro.
Fantastic. So we hope you stay tuned so you can take part in the marvelous music. We hope that you take time to really try out. If you haven't been trying out the new schedule, like really let yourself dive in.
The new KOPN schedule?
Yeah, the new KOPN schedule.
Yeah, we've shifted things around if you haven't noticed. We used to be on Thursdays from 7 to 8, and then we moved to Fridays.
What I'm liking about it is that most of us have like patterns in our day, and one of the intentions with it was if you log in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon every day, it won't be the same show necessarily, or 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 in the morning, but that it'll have a similar, it'll have some sort of the same context. So talk radio usually until 7 o'clock in the evening, and then music after that until 8 in the morning. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
And then 8 o'clock is the community snippets.
From 7:50 to 8 is the wake up, the morning wake up.
Yeah.
And there's different themes for each day. Trevor hosts Monday's wake up, which is politics. I am actually starting to host Tuesdays wake up, which is health and wellness.
Woo!
Yeah. Sarah's doing technology health, the technology wake up on Wednesdays. Friday is entertainment, and I am spacing out on Thursday, but I think it might be agriculture or.
So
don't quote me on that.
Yeah, so 7:50 in the morning. So that's if you are you don't have a lot of time in your life, but you want to catch 10 minutes of what's going on in the world. Tune in 89.5 KOPN, 7:50 a.m. each day.
We do weather headlines and local headlines and an interview with a expert in the field of one of those themes.
Very cool. So we hope that you enjoyed tonight's show, and we will see you in a month. We're going to go out with a little Valerie June. The song is called Got Soul. Mm-hmm.